Which buyer behavior shift has surprised you the most in the recent years?
Somebody who is going to compare you with a competitor and they are asking ChatGPT to create like a 5-page report on that whole assessment. So anything that has happened anytime, if there has been any issues, if there have been any customer complaint, that they're there to stay. The key is to be strategically selective rather than scatter across. We always face a translation problem between inside out and outside in perspectives.
Today on Marketing Growth Fuel, we're joined by Madhurr Goswamii, General Manager Marketing at Tata Communications and a seasoned B2B marketing leader with over 17 years of experience across SaaS, enterprise technology, and product marketing. Throughout his career, Madhur has led product marketing, account-based marketing, demand generation, and growth initiatives at organizations including Tata Communications, CleverTap, HCL Technologies, and IBM. At Tata Communications, he is focused on building integrated marketing programs that connect content, digital channels, and buyer journeys to drive meaningful business growth. Let's get started. Welcome back to Tech Dog's Marketing Growth Fuel, the podcast where we go beyond funnels and frameworks to uncover the people and purpose behind great marketing. Welcome to the show, Madhur. It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, good to be here and excited for this conversation, Vikram.
There is so much on the agenda today. We want to talk a lot about what's happening in the space, in B2B marketing, buyer journeys, you know but I want to kind of set some context, right? In order to do that, I'd probably start off with something that you've done for the longest, right? So you've worked across product marketing, ABM, demand gen, obviously enterprise marketing, especially during an era when buyer behavior has changed so dramatically. Because
Correct.
today's enterprise buyers don't rely on a single source of information. They move beyond or between analyst reports to communities to newsletters. I mean, there are podcasts and there is the peer recommendations and increasingly AI generated answers, before even speaking to a vendor. So let's start with how that evolution unfolds. What do you think has changed the most in the way enterprise buyers consume content today?
I feel the biggest shift, Vikram, has been in how dynamic that whole enterprise buyer's journey has become. So, like you said, today's buyers do a lot of independent research well before connecting with a partner or a vendor. I also feel that the focus has moved from, way back in the time, from from looking at content which was more static to something which is more interactive, which is more authentic, which is more peer led, for example. Today, I think somebody, for example, would rather watch a 3 to 5 minute video case study about something that a vendor or a partner has done for one of their enterprise customers, or tune into a podcast, for example, while they're traveling to work, rather than go through a 20-page PDF or of product related information or whatever. The other thing I feel that has taken up a lot of focus is on peer communities, like you said. Things like WhatsApp groups, LinkedIn communities, where these enterprise buyers get to swap information, get insights, get unfiltered opinions from peers and actual users of a particular platform of product. And as we all know, and you pointed out it as well, AI search tools are here as well. Now, what that means is for something like quick vendor comparisons, researching on use cases for my particular industry, or finding the best solution to their specific needs and limitations. People are doing all of that right now. This means by the time a buyer actually visits a vendor's website or talks to a sales rep, they've likely formed a strong opinion on what they need, and perhaps your brand and capabilities as well. I think I remember in a recent Gartner survey that they published, they said that more than 60 or 65% of B2B buyers now favor what they're calling as a rep-free purchase experience.
Yeah,
And nearly half of them actually are already using AI during buying decision making. So, to kind of like summarize, content that's relevant and easy to consume, showcasing your expertise, being available in the places that you expect these buyers or prospects to be, very strong customer and peer led voices in the market, and definitely AI discoverability.
and according to you, when you think about it, what or which buyer behavior shift has surprised you the most in the recent years?
I think nothing should be surprising enough. It hasn't changed overnight, to be honest. It has been gradual, but because of the amount of intelligence that AI is bringing to the fore, I think that has been a substantial shift, I would say. Of course, it has built up over time with the kind of models that are now available, and with the kind of data that is sitting out there, which these models have access to. But I think that is key. So somebody who is going to compare you with a competitor, and they are asking ChatGPT to create like a 5-page report on that whole assessment. You need to be figuring out, not just from a model discoverability perspective, but also what kind of content you are creating. Are you creating enough competitive content? Are you making sure that you are making it sound it in the voice that the customer is actually going to consume it in as well? All of that is pretty substantial actually, and there is, like we say, for digital world, nothing goes away. So anything that has happened anytime, if there has been any issues, if there have been any customer complaint, that there's to stay.
For me, I think personally in the last decade or so, and you pointed it out rightly, but I think the most interesting buying behavior shift was, the whole video piece.
Mhm.
I never expected, B2B buyers, wanting to invest in video content, in terms of consuming it. I think that's also got to do with the fact that on the B2B, B2C side of things, I think we transitioned very quickly from the TikToks, to the Instagrams and, the short form content very, in a very short period of time. I think was it 2018, 17, 18 is when,
Yeah,
the
after that, man. Yeah.
yeah. Very quickly we moved, and then I think B2B had to, in many ways, kind of say, okay, fine, listen, we need to do this, but we can't do the whole 90-second piece. Maybe we do it a little longer. And as much as, obviously, people have different types of consumption patterns and ideas of how they would like to consume. But for me, I think video was something that I never thought enterprise buyers would pick up, especially short form video.
Yeah.
And then very recently, I think, is the whole podcast piece, right? So we went from not more podcast as a, as a media or as a brand layer, but more on the understanding of that I want to have a real human being heard rather than me, consuming a piece of content. And that's becoming more and more increasingly, for a better lack of it, evident in the world of an AI generated content, because everybody's just
Focus on the educational part of it rather than selling what you have to offer. And some of the companies, like, I love HubSpot. They I think they started off this way back, of how they created this whole educational model of educational content, certifications, exams, in-person trainings, and they never kind of like pitched HighSpot there. All they did was to kind of become the thought leadership
correct.
people in that space.
Moving on, obviously, the kind of buying behavior and the kind of channels that are out there today. I'm assuming it's going to be very confusing for all the marketing teams, because
Yep.
either they decide to be present everywhere, which was good when the number of channels were limited.
Mhm.
Okay, and now obviously the channels have increased quite a bit, and I mean, your buyer could be there on all or could be there on some. So, how do you think marketing teams should decide this?
See, buyers, like you said, could be anywhere. The question is to us, how do I find out where? So in today's multiple channel world that we live in, I feel, at least personally, the key is to be strategically selective rather than scatter across. People try to make sure that as a marketer, I'm reporting to my management and to my board, etc., saying that I am everywhere. But I don't think that's possible, with the kind of resources and monies that we have. And it B strategically also doesn't make sense. So it might be tempting enough to do that, but practically wouldn't be possible.
Hmm.
Instead, I think what a lot of marketers need to do is to put some time and effort in researching where your high value buyers actually spend time, and then commit to excelling on those core channels. Once you do that right, then it's a matter of going to other channels and doing something there as well. But master that first is what I would say. For example, we have seen a lot of traction and deeper conversation. Sorry, in deeper conversations when we actually do very bespoke events with some of our decision makers on the ground, roundtables, workshops, design thinking, sessions, etc., rather than going to very large industry events, rather than doing a very spray and pray kind of an approach. I also feel that like we talked about in the first part, the platforms which are dedicated to peer-to-peer learning, peer-to-peer content that each everyone is sharing, we have to make sure that we are there as well, because like we said, a lot of that conversation is happening before they're even reaching out to you. Another angle that I think teams need to figure out is, when deciding on which channels to go to, is to consider your team's resources and strengths as well. So,
Hmm.
for example, you might have access to a very good agency or in-house team that is great on video, for example, like you talked about video, but have limited bandwidth for other things like social media, LinkedIn, tweets, whatever. So
Hmm.
then it makes sense for you to kind of focus on what your resources and what your strengths are, then forcing a presence on each social media platform. I think
Hmm.
marketing teams need to focus on the channels where you can provide consistent quality content, and where you feel or you have researched that your buyers are actively listening.
When I look at it, I think obviously getting the channel is critical.
Of course.
uh, but as a marketer, and we could probably get it right over a period of time, when we've kind of thought about it and experimented a bit, but the channel strategy can be figured out. But the success, in my opinion, eventually depends upon whether the message is going to resonate to the buyer once he arrives. So now I want to kind of talk about that a little, about talk about messaging. uh, See, in the last year alone, I think, uh, again, this was some research by one of those analyst firms, but buyer groups have become larger.
Of
Okay,
course.
research has become more self-directed. Uh, Marketers have lesser control over, when and how they can engage buyers. Then there's the whole dark social piece of it. Uh, and then in all of this, messaging is going to become incredibly important. Then why do enterprise marketing teams often struggle to connect the product narratives with the content that buyers can easily understand and act on, given the fact that they have this context? Why is it such a challenge still?
I think most enterprise marketing teams are guilty of this, and I have been guilty of this myself at certain stage of my career as well. I think we always face a translation problem between inside out and outside in perspectives. Internally, you might be creating product narratives that are full of industry jargon, detailed features, technical specs which are like absolute shiny. Uh, which makes sense, because typically these marketing people, particularly product marketing people, we live and breathe our product, right?
Hmm.
But our buyers don't. That's the sad part. They are busy solving their own problems without memorizing your product terminology, or how do you look at that space, for example. So when we put out content that's essentially a product capability list, it doesn't resonate with them. Like I said, I've been guilty of this as well, long time back. In which case, for example, what we did was, we kind of reframed the whole narrative to make it more plain language, telling something which was a simple story about how it solved a specific challenge for that particular persona that we were trying to target, and it really worked.
Hmm.
Like you said, I also remember one of the marketing studies that I read recently. It said like maybe more than 70% of B2B buyers actually trust thought leadership content more than traditional product specific content. So building credibility using what you have to offer, or as a part of what you offer, is going to be super important for marketing teams. So
Hmm.
clarity, context of why it is relevant for the buyer, and the credibility of why they should listen to me. That's something that should be the most important one. They also need to collaborate very closely with the product teams, and even the sales teams, to shape messaging that's grounded in customer stories, for example, in their own language, in their own pain points and challenges, making sure that every feature we put forward is tied to a clear benefit or action a buyer can very easily relate to.
I think when marketing teams have kind of gotten that right, and I'm just going to build on what you said, right? So they have to collaborate with sales and marketing teams, and
Yep.
but marketing did its job. It aligned, the inside out and outside in view. Okay, so they built out a compelling narrative.
Mhm.
Okay, as much as how difficult it was, but then somehow, when you're working across the product teams and the demand gen teams, and then you're trying to work across the sales teams and maybe
Mhm.
the customer success or customer marketing teams, that consistency may not always be there.
Correct.
And I think then it becomes more of an alignment issue. Okay,
Yep.
so in your opinion, how can all of these teams work effectively, with the marketing team, especially in today's world when buyer journeys are more complex than ever and more AI led or content led now?
Yeah. So I am actually also an ITSMA certified account based marketer, and long time back when I was doing this course, Vikram, one of the first and most important sections in that training, in that whole course, was on marketing and sales alignment. It was a little surprising to me as to why we are spending so much time on this basic thing, until I realized how much broken it was even then. Achieving alignment across all the different teams, whether it is ABM, growth team, sales, demand gen, whichever team, it's even more critical now. Uh, in a in a long buyer journey, a prospect is not really differentiating between a marketing touch or a sales touch, right? They have one continuous engagement with you as a company, as a brand, as a name, and it has to be consistent.
Hmm.
Which means internally all these teams have to operate as one team. uh, Now, one practical step that we implemented in one of my previous organizations was on co-creating account level plans,
Hmm.
which included multiple marketing, sales, solutioning teams. As a part of this plan, we used to define shared goals and metrics across this particular account. It could be in terms of account engagement or pipeline influence or actual incremental revenue that we want to derive out of them, not just marketing specific lead counts or clicks. We also used to have a weekly account huddle where the ABM marketeer, performance marketeer, cross solution expert, account executive would all like sit together and map out the next best outreach, next best content that they want to create for each of the high priority personas that they were targeting. This made sure that there was a constant engagement with the account and the individual decision maker, uh, so it feels cohesive to the buyer and not as a one-off engagement that they might be
Hmm.
encountering. Another very important piece is the knowledge sharing that needs to happen between multiple teams. So, uh, something like a sales team, for example, because they have more customer face value, they need to provide inputs on what messaging pain points are resonating in the market, and pass that on to marketing, so that marketing teams can also adjust their tactics, messaging, etc. in real time. uh, like you said, in the kind of complex journeys that we are in right now, sales and marketing have to be collaborating constantly, treating content and narratives as a shared tool kit that they have,
Hmm.
and have to be 100% aligned on which accounts, which personas, what messages to take to them, etc. So it has to be 100% aligned, and otherwise it wouldn't even get you any traction.
Good strong framework I think a lot of marketers can build out. uh, Now let's talk a little about AI, because
So.
AI is a big elephant in the room. It went on from being an experiment. Actually, no, it was not an experiment in the marketing space. I think it went after marketing the first, of
Mhm.
all the things,
Correct.
coding and marketing. But I mean, one could say that it's moved beyond experimentation. Now it's moved perhaps more into adoption, by the marketing community. And obviously there is a lot of fear around it, there's a lot of excitement around it, but most of it still focuses on content generation, right? We're talking about creating ad copies, blogs, thought leadership content, quote unquote, uh, everything to do with content. Okay.
Mhm.
But I'm sure, as a marketing leader, you might see that there could be bigger opportunities that it could unlock, from a marketing standpoint of view. Are there any specific ones that you are personally excited about, that AI, in my opinion, would change in the next few years these 4 or 5 things that we did very differently before?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pick just one, but I'll give you my opinion on maybe two or three angles there. One is, like you said, content creation. Is the most immediate and deeply transformative using AI, and it has already happened to a large extent, as you and I both know. Uh, but probably campaign optimization is also not very far behind. Another angle, which you could think of, is also in a lot of marketing outreach and even inbound leads and connects that they have. Voice AI could become critical as well. Now, when I say voice AI, I mean voice AI agents which are able to, help you from an inbound calls perspective, or an outbound calling perspective. They could help you to navigate some of these routine queries that a customer or a prospect might have. Look at calendars and set up meetings with a sales rep or a solution rep, depending on what the requirement is. And all of that happens automatically without any human requirement, actually. So
Hmm.
basically, when the final set of meeting is already scheduled, the sales rep already knows what has been talked with, what is the requirement of this person, which company they are from, what kind of competitors they have already assessed, maybe, and what we can offer to them based on whatever we have available. All of that could, from a couple of weeks of effort, could now be set up in like a couple of days now, with this whole voice AI agents that we have available. You already talked about AI tools kind of tackling things like, writing blogs, video editing, design, competitive intelligence, and whatnot. But on the analytics or the campaign optimization side as well, I think AI is doing a lot, because it can crunch data much faster than any human can, which means that you can automatically adjust bids in real time, optimize your targeting, optimize your content, or personalize your content in real time to improve performance of your campaigns. All of this, one part, but I still very strongly believe that uh, strategic decision making still needs to be done with a strong human touch, right? But even there, AI can serve as a very good assistant, very strategic assistant, right? I think marketers need to embrace these AI technology, AI tools, etc., to augment their work. Using it to handle repetitive work, tasks, pattern identification, intelligence, while focusing their actual human energy on strategy making, creativity, alignment with other teams, building relationships with their prospects and customers, all of that. So it's a I would say it's going to definitely change a lot of things. It already is, but the humans are still very important, is what I would say.
One of the things that personally I would say maybe excited about is this whole piece about agentic AI. And
Correct.
I mean, I think it was it last time when Google's put out a demo in one of their events where they said that personal shopping will become agentic. I think Apple put out something again which says that they would make things agentic, and I'm very positive that this similar thing is going to come in the B2B space as well, right? So I mean, it's almost like the whole agent is marketing, an agent is buying piece, right? So instead of, I mean, in my opinion, I think as a marketer, I would no longer sell to a human procurement officer or a ICP. I'd be probably selling to a B2B quote unquote AI agent that's buying. Okay. And
I don't think that is the agent that is buying, but that agent is definitely going to assist the actual human
correct.
who is buying. So you have to do it both ways. So whatever you are saying, or whatever, wherever you are going in terms of platforms or channels as well, has to align to both the agents as well as humans. So it becomes, of course, more trickier. But then some of these things, as we learn AI as well as marketeers, we can easily predict, and we can make sure. And Vikram, to my mind, whether it is an agent, whether it is a human who you are kind of catering to, I think the basic principles, like I said, remain the same. If you
Hmm.
have the right kind of content, if you are talking in their language, in their pain points, in their challenges, you are present in where these agents or buyers are actually going and looking for that information. I think that's what marketers need to do as well from a B2B perspective.
And just building on that, right? Obviously,
Mhm.
the KPIs are changing. Because you have now AI-led execution. In marketing, and the expectations from what marketing can deliver is rising even more, and that's got to do with how much you're investing and how much you could, return as return out investment. As a leader, how do you prepare, the teams for such environments?
I feel today's marketing leaders need to prepare their teams by doing a few things that are coming to my mind. One is by fostering adaptability and agility. Two is maybe spending time and effort on upskilling.
Hmm.
And last but certainly not the least is having a laser sharp focus on outcomes. And when I say outcomes, I mean business outcomes. Any team in marketing should be comfortable with data, AI tools, etc. Not just comfortable, they should see these AI tools, these data sets as their best friends.
Hmm.
That would also mean that marketing leaders should provide their teams with training opportunities and encourage a lot of experimentation with many of these new platforms that are available, without
Hmm.
having any fear of failure in mind. And this is not just true for marketing, in my perspective. Any team that embraces constant learning adapts much faster and is bound to succeed.
Hmm.
Second, specifically, around KPIs, for example, like you said, with AI handling a lot of these execution tasks, marketers might want to shift their metrics from volume based stats like number of campaigns or number of content pieces that are delivered, to very business outcome specific indicators, like win rates, pipeline contribution, customer engagement scores or quality, campaign ROI, product adoption,
Hmm.
capability adoption, etc. So, and leaders need to communicate to their teams that these new KPIs aren't about pressurizing them or taking away something from them, but it is about reflecting marketing's tighter alignment with business goals. Finally, I think, a tone of continuous improvement because of course, whatever we have in hand with AI and data. Uh, any marketer would tell you that, with rising expectations from their top management, from their boards, they are more accountable than ever. So building a culture where people, their teams proactively track results, share successes and failures, and continuously refine their approach. That's the kind of DNA that marketing leaders need to inculcate in their teams. Even if execution automates, they need to double down on training their teams, creative thinking, ethical judgment. Those will be the traits that I feel will keep marketing valuable even when these AI and algorithms are actually doing the grunt regular work.
Fantastic, because I think my next follow-up question was going to be, if I was to ask you, like, say, maybe 3 or 5 skills that every marketer has to have to remain relevant, because the profession is now evolving a lot faster. I think you've pretty much covered that. So
Yep.
thank you so much, for those. Obviously, this has been a great conversation so far. uh,
Yep. My
now
pleasure.
what we would like to do is that, next we'd love to have a quick fun, marketing mashup, this or that game that we play with all our guests.
Mhm.
uh, would love for you to be completely instinctive. I'm going to give you 2 options. We're going to test your marketing instincts,
Okay.
if I was to say. Let me know when you're ready and we'll go for it.
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah.
Long form thought leadership or short form video?
Short form video.
AI search or traditional search?
AI search for sure.
Product marketing or growth marketing?
Growth marketing, if I have to pick one.
ABM precision or broad market awareness?
ABM precision, man.
Brand building or demand generation?
Short term demand generation, long term brand building.
Own media or social media platforms?
My personal thing is own media.
Customer stories or analyst validations?
Customer stories.
Content quality or content scale?
Quality.
Marketing intuition or marketing analytics?
Analytics. With some form of intuition, maybe, but yeah, analytics.
Centralized marketing teams or distributed specialists?
I would say like a centralized team, but what we call like a diamond team structure. So multiple marketeers forming one single team, working on one central proposition, on one central region, or whatever it could be.
Community engagement or campaign engagement?
Community engagement.
And one last one, before we let you go: the future of marketing, AI powered or human powered?
That's a tough one. AI powered for sure, but like I said throughout, humans are there for a reason.
Nicely done, Madhur. You made it through that round without overthinking, a lot about things. Let's finish that with one last question that gives
Sure.
us a little glimpse into how you think about the brand that you're working with. So, if your company brand had to be represented by a fictional character, someone that
Mhm.
totally gets your tone and values, who would it be and why?
You mean like a real character?
A fictional character. It could be one of the movie characters if you choose to.
I can't think of like an actual movie character or a fictional character even. But if you ask me, like, we might have to make one. A person
Okay.
who is basically uh, making things simple is I would say, complex problems, simple solutions. That's what this person's job is.
All right. So, that brings us to the end of the show. Mother, thank you so much once again for joining us. Would love to have you back on for, a roundtable that we are planning to host soon. Yeah, I'm glad that we had a discussion about everything from AI to buyer journeys, to how, marketers can stay relevant. So, thank you once again so much for joining us. Really appreciate this. And we will see you soon. Any
Yeah,
parting
glad
thoughts?
to be here, Vikram. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.